So I'd first like to start off by recognizing a few influential and significant women who contributed to the world of science. Marie Curie. She was the first woman to ever win a Nobel Peace Prize for her pioneering research on radioactivity. She's also the only person in history to ever win it twice in two different fields. Katherine Johnston, an African-American mathematician, best known for her vital work with NASA that helped send man to the moon. Maria Mayer. She's the second woman to ever win a Nobel Peace Prize for proposing the nuclear shell model in the atomic nucleus. Rosalind Franklin for her X-ray diffraction images of DNA. Yu Tu, a Chinese scientist for discovering one of the best malaria-fighting drugs. And the list goes on. Now raise your hand if you've recognized or heard of at least 3 of these women. All right, so truth is, many people know close to nothing about their stories. And these women have devoted to just as much, if not more, than the household name scientists. These women have not nearly been acknowledged, credited, or celebrated for their household discoveries. And maybe it's not so much about saying thank you and giving them a round of applause, because clearly approval was the last thing they needed. And it's not about creating a rivalry between men and women in science, but maybe it's more so about how their light has been dimmed and how we as a society have failed to revive that light and shine it onto a narrative that could be used to empower women in a time where they're looking for it most. Because if only we knew about their passion and determination to participate, all while facing forms of discrimination, whether that be racism or sexism, maybe that would be our motivation not to settle. Or maybe our motivation can root from what could have been had they been seen as equals and didn't have these limitations. You see, whether we like it or not, the people that are broadcasted in the media, taught about in schools, and those prominent figureheads in our communities all help shape who we are, who we aspire to be, and how we perceive the world. Women are having a hard time trying to grasp the idea of how it's possible to excel in a world where even after time and time again, we're still not good enough, and we're still not granted equity. And until it's easy to find female scientists on the public record, encouragement needs to be at an all-time high. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but first, I want to discuss the universal value of visible representation. So just like anything else, when we're accustomed to not seeing something frequently, we often get comfortable with not usually thinking about it. Like the popular saying, out of sight, out of mind. When we don't see representation, it's almost impossible for us to even think about where we fit in. So most of us will just move on and find something that's a little bit more feasible. This is where it becomes a problem. Because when we see that underrepresentation and assume it's okay, the consequence is a loss of innovation that affects us all. The world is changing every day. We need new technologies, new initiatives to help operate and sustain the world. We want to adapt to these changes and maximize innovation, not minimize it. Women make up 51% of the world's population. When women are denied the platform to lead, we're denied the opportunity to make a difference in the world. It's almost as if the world is losing half of its power, and we all pay the price. For those of you who may not know, STEM is an acronym for sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Fewer women decide to enter these fields, and that can be based off of many things. One thing is for sure, the outcome of who is more successful in understanding STEM is not gender exclusive. And the gender gaps present in these fields are more so socially constructed rather than due to a lack of cognitive ability. Another thing that may play a role is that STEM isn't necessarily an equal playing field for women. So oftentimes, women feel the need to alter their paths with less male competition And those women who do try to succeed are often hindered by backlash effects. There's also unconscious bias. We all have them. There's actually a psychological phenomenon called stereotype threat, where people are aware that they belong in a minority, and this awareness can actually initiate that stereotype, causing them to have a lack of confidence in the work that they do every day. Women of color face a unique set of unconscious bias that they have to hurdle on top of many other things that prevent them to enter, let alone lead in these fields. With the help of men and women everywhere, we've come such a long way in scientific breakthrough. However, the internal issues still persist. And it's not something that can be solved by a math equation or a chemical reaction, but rather by welcoming and embracing equity and creating a sense of comfort that accepts and respects high ambitions. And if you don't believe me, the numbers surely will. In Canada specifically, while women make up a majority of graduates at 60%, they're still less likely to pursue STEM degrees and account for just 33% of its graduates. And despite advancements over the last 2 decades, we're still predominantly underrepresented in engineering, mathematics, and computer sciences. And over the last 3 decades, or 28 years to be exact, women involvement in STEM workforce has only increased by 2%. Not to mention the noticeable gender pay gaps in salaries across Canada. In fact, women only make up 3% of CEO positions across the country, and that includes all categories, all fields, and all subjects. Knowing this, can we confidently say gender inequality is something of the past? What we can say is that more women need to enter, stay, and succeed in these fields. We absolutely need to break the structural barriers in gender equality. We also need to break those strong negative stereotypes and unconscious biases as well. We need to give our girls and our women strong, successful role models, something grand to aspire to. With that being said, how can we, as a society, overcome these gender imbalances in STEM innovation, and how can we better support those women who are looking to lead? Well, one way of encouraging women into these fields is to keep drawing attention to it. That's one foot in the door. The other foot is sustaining their interest. So more encouragement, less intimidation, more sense of belonging, more mentors, etc. Well, when I realized that I could potentially become one of these statistics, I personally decided that I had to do something. Anything, even if it made the smallest change. I began to get involved in STEM outreach programs, a way to educate and raise awareness of the public contribution to science. I had a specific concentration on attracting young girls, and I made it my mission to help mentor them where they needed it to be, to crush those negative connotations, and most importantly, to pass on my passion for science. I noticed something way bigger than I ever expected. And I know people say this all the time, but the youth really are our future leaders of tomorrow. And it's up to us to pass down the knowledge so that they can build and create on things that we or past leaders couldn't. These kids had a lot of big dreams, from being blasted off into space, or becoming a neurosurgeon, or building a suit similar to the one Iron Man wears. And I couldn't help but think about how awful it would be when these young girls evolve into young women and feel like the odds are being stacked against them. How we potentially could be losing another astronaut in space, another neurosurgeon in the ER, or possibly a real-life Iron Man. All due to things that could have easily been prevented. So a little bit about myself. I'm from Somalia. There was a civil war that broke out in the 90s, which is why my parents immigrated here to Canada. I went back home in 2013, where I absorbed a lot of culture, a lot of beautiful sights, a lot of family members I had no idea existed. There, in my father's hometown of Bur'a, we visited a math and science school. I was blown away by all the students attending. I was even more blown away that the ratios were almost balanced. Somalia is a country that's still facing repercussions from the war. And every day they're continuing to rebuild to bring back what once was. I realized that maybe because of this visible need to restore and repair, that maybe these kids, whether they be male or female, felt like they needed to contribute in any way they could. That was their motivation. And the best way to achieve this was to gain a strong education. Of course, these schools were very costly. A lot of families couldn't keep up with them. So with the help of my father, we opened a charity to help support some of these children. We ended up gaining a lot of attention from young girls who felt like they finally had an opportunity to pursue their careers in STEM. Until we live in a world where women don't feel like they have to sacrifice everything in order to receive less than mediocre, or where they have to give up something in order to excel in something else, or where they have to convince themselves that they're incapable or underqualified. Hawain la'ani wahoy la'an. This is a Somali proverb. It roughly translates to where there are no women, there is no home. It's open to many interpretations, but what it exemplifies at its deepest level is that women are a key pillar to society. This is what we need to instill in those women, so we can also live in a world where women aren't seen as a loss to the company when they have to go on maternity leave, or when we're denied positions because of the color of our skin or the religious garments we decide to wear, or when 1, 2, or even 10 women risking everything on the line is still not enough to acknowledge and respect the words "Me Too." And personally, I don't know what I want to do in the future, whether I want to stay in sciences, whether I want to lead in sciences. What I do know, however, is I want to secure the idea that I, or any of the young women I encountered, have the security to fully make that option. That being said, I would like to send out PSA, a public service announcement, to those women who are not looking to claim, but to reclaim their seats at the table. The seed is something we already have, something we grew up learning, the persistence, the stamina, the resilience. And the reclaiming is something we need to recover as it's been unnecessarily blocked by barriers and adversity. That graceful persistence we continue to have every day is what truly makes us worthy and suitable leaders. Thank you.